everybody, it's Keren here from tuppencecoloured.co.uk, and thank you very much for joining me today. Now from my living room window I can see a lighthouse that isn't entirely unlike the image in this stamp here. So when I saw the stamp set in the Spring Summer catalogue, it went straight to the top of my wish list. And having got it home, I had to decide how I was going to use it. So I have decided to do something a little bit different today. Instead of making a card with it, I have made a canvas, and this is going to hang on my wall in my living room. So stay with me and I will show you how I did it. For today's project I'm using stamps from the High Tide set, and I'm using quite a lot of different colours of ink actually. I've got Pacific Point and Marina Mist, Delightful Dijon and Tempting Turquoise, my basic black archival and a little bit of mint macaron. I'm using beeswax. These are beeswax pellets and I got them from Amazon, and I have a Kleenex tissue. I'm also using a small artist's canvas. This was the most inexpensive one I could find, and I'm using re-inkers in Tempting Turquoise, So Saffron and Marina Mist, and I'm also using acrylic paint. I've squeezed a good amount of white acrylic paint into my palette and I'm going to start colouring it. So I'm going to take some of it and put it into one of the smaller pans, and I think I'm going to start with the So Saffron. So I'm going to add a few drops and mix it. Okay, and that is giving me a nice vivid colour. I think I could probably do with a little bit more. Keep adding drops, just a few at a time, until I've got the shade, or the tint actually, because I'm adding colour to white, so that makes it a tint. So I'm just going to add a few drops at a time until it's the tint I want. Okay, so that's now just about the colour that I want it, and actually I've got quite a lot of paint there, so I've probably got more than I need, but what the hey. So I'm going to load up my palette knife, and I'm just going to scrape this across the bottom of my canvas. I'm going to try and keep this area here. I'm not going to paint into that so much, okay? And I just want, okay. Right, now I'm going to go and mix up some white paint with my other two colours, and I'll be back in a minute. Right, these are now just about the colour that I want them, and I learnt my lesson from mixing this one. I used much less paint for these two, so this is the Tempting Turquoise, so that's going to be my mid-ground. And the Marina Mist is going to be the top part. Okay, I'm not going to play with that anymore. I'm just going to leave it to dry. be quite honest with you, I've done most of the stamping for this piece off camera ahead of time, because it's quite repetitive for one thing, and for another thing, I wanted to give the ink plenty of time to soak into the tissue and to be really, really dry. So I'm going to show you how I do the one piece, and then it'll be, here's one I made earlier, so I hope that's okay. Now I'm using basic black, and I've got 1/2 of the lighthouse stamp on my block, because this is a 2-part stamp. And to ink this up, because this is archival ink, I'm giving it a kind of rubbing motion on the pad, because this pad is much firmer than it is in the other ink pads that we use, the normal ones, and I want to get a good coverage. Now I think I actually used Night of Navy in the one that I'm probably going to be using in the project today. Depends how this one turns out. Okay, and yeah, that's quite pale, so if I was going to be using that in the project, I would either ink it up again and go back over the top, or I would, to be honest, I think I would probably just do another one, because do you know what, this is just a piece of tissue. They're intended to be thrown away. So now I'm putting the other part of the lighthouse onto my stamp pad. I'm just going to live with this, because actually I'm just wondering how this is going to turn out. It might turn out quite well. And I'm inking it up with Pacific Point. Now that one was just a case of tapping, and I haven't put this terribly well onto my block, but never mind, because this is a clear block and I can see where I'm stamping. So I'm just lining up with what I had before, I hope, and press down and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I have got my silicone mat underneath, because whenever you're using photopolymers, if it's a stamp of any sort of size at all, then you do need to give it something underneath that it can press into. Okay, and that's actually worked out quite well. I quite like that, because this bit is dark black enough, but this is actually quite shaded, so yeah, I actually quite like that one. Okay, so what I would do now, well, first of all, I'm going to put the tops back on to my ink pads, because 1, it stops them drying out, and 2, it stops me sticking my thumb in them. And then I would take my snips, and while it's still on a 2-ply, so I'm using both layers of my tissue, I would just trim around that as closely as I can, and but not obsessively, because the tissue will kind of melt into the beeswax and it won't be all that noticeable when it's all finished. So trust me on this. If it's an image that you can actually tear out, and I don't want to tear this one because I don't want to risk breaking it, it really will blend well into the background. So there's my lighthouse, and I've also stamped this piece, and I used Delightful Dijon and also Delightful Dijon for that piece. I stamped this piece in Tempting Turquoise and in Marina Mist, and I stamped these in Marina Mist, and these little bits of grass I stamped in Mint Macaron, and of course the sentiment is in Basic Black. So those are the pieces that I'm going to be using when I start to put my canvas all together. Here's my canvas, and the paint has had plenty of time to dry, and I've just gone around all 4 sides with some black paint just to make it pop visually. Got all my stamped pieces of tissue here, and I've gone ahead and cut them out, and actually I'm going to cut this one a little bit further. Now you don't need to be obsessive about this, but the closer you get to the edge of your stamping, the less there will be to show. Now sometimes you can tear your shapes out, and that's even better because you get you don't get a completely smooth edge. Now I haven't done this flight of birds, so I'm just going to chop these out roughly. And at this stage I'm still not 100% sure if I'm going to use all of these pieces in the final product, because it's all going to depend very much how it looks when I start to put it together. You know, because this is one of those times when maybe you start off with a vision in your head, or I do anyway, and as you go along it kind of changes. Now these birds that I've just cut out are still on a double ply piece, and I find it easier to work with 2-ply when I'm stamping or cutting, but for the finished product I only need single ply, so I'm going to very, very carefully, I hope, try and split this piece. So I'm going to just blow on this edge here just to try and give myself an in, and I've got a little corner there where I can start, and I'm just going to be very careful and pull those 2 pieces apart, and now I have a very fine piece of tissue which is probably going to go on my canvas around about there. The beeswax is melted, and in case you're wondering, this is the case of a jumbo tea light. Took the tea light out, put the wax pellets in, and this is the warmer part of a room centre. It comes with a saucer on top, and you're supposed to put like blocks of scented wax in there to perfume your room, and I've taken the little saucer off because in this particular kind it is detachable, and I'm just turned it on and it just warms me beeswax nicely. Now you may have, if you've been crafting for some time, or you may be able to get hold of a gadget called a melting pot, which Ranger used to sell, and they've discontinued it, and I do have one, but since I would be teasing you if I used that, I thought I would show you the alternative. Alright, so the other thing I want to say is that any brush that you use for beeswax is going to be dedicated thereafter to beeswax, because you won't be able to clean it, and when it cools it will be hard. And I'm keeping dabbing my brush into the wax just to keep it warm, to stop it solidifying. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first piece that I want to put down, which is this piece. And I'm going to decide where I want it. That's my sand dune, and I think around about there. So with the beeswax I'm just going to paint across the top of it very lightly, and as you can see there is some colour transference, but not a vast amount. As you can see, it just seems to melt into the background. Okay, and now I'm going to bring the lighthouse into position, and I'm going to pop that around about there. And when I was prepping this, I thought I'd used basic black on this, but now I've put it onto the canvas, I can see that I actually must have used Night of Navy. Okay, and the wax hardens really pretty quickly. Okay, so the other thing I want to definitely be in place is the sentiment, which is a lovely sentiment. You have the most amazing ability to take an ordinary moment and make it shine. Isn't that lovely? Okay, and I'm just putting that in to the background. Okay, just painting over it with the wax. Okay, and that is starting to come together. I think me. Okay, so what else have I got? Well, I've got the birds, which I cut out. So am I going to use them? Yeah, I think I am. I think I'm going to put them over in that corner there. And this is just so quick. And the other medium I like to play with when I'm doing this kind of thing is polish or Mod Podge or something like that, and those things take time to dry, whereas beeswax, once it's cooled, you know, you're golden. Okay, so I've got some smaller sand dunes here. You see, I tore that one when I was putting it on, so I'm just going to plop that one in and spread it out. I've got a piece here that has encroached onto the lighthouse and I don't want it to, so I've got my heat tool and I'm just going to warm up that little bit there. And that now has remelted the wax, and it means that I can just shove that little piece just out of the way, just so it's not in front of the lighthouse. And I also think I may want to move the lighthouse a little bit. So I'm just warming up the wax, and when it's shiny I know it's liquid, so I'm just going to pull that down just a little bit. That's had time to cool and to set, and I'm just going to do one more thing to it before I call it finished, and that is to bring in a soft cloth and polish it. And now that is finished. Now if you're a bit of a mixed media artist and you think, well, I like that, but I'd like to add some more, you know, embellishments and some more texture into it, then if it's something that is light enough to be held by the beeswax, then go ahead, warm the beeswax up again with a heat tool and just embed whatever is in there. If it's something 3D, it's got a little bit of weight to it, I would definitely recommend using hot glue to stick whatever it might be onto your canvas. But that is it for today, and I do thank you very, very much for joining me and for staying with me to this point. And if you've liked this video, then do click that like button below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, share this video, and if you want to hop on over to my Facebook page, details are in the more information box below, and leave me a picture of what you've been up to, whether it's inspired by me, whether it's Stampin' Up, whether it's not Stampin' Up. I'd really, really like to see it. For now though, thank you very much for joining me once again, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.